the night sky, trying to make me see your stars. But the dark gets lonely. Now I see violet, I can feel silence. And the dark's all that I see. When your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound, I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky. You're the night sky, hiding behind dark gray clouds. I can't figure you out now. I see your blue. There is so much cold in you, and the silence is so loud when you go. I just stay dancing with my shadow all day. Watch the tide. I can't find the point where pass the line, right? You're the night sky, I'm trying to see your stars, but I've always feared the dark. Now I see violet, I can feel your silence. You always feel so far when your stars have burnt out and your heart makes no sound. I'll find violet in your eyes. You'll always be my night sky. You'll always be my night sky.
inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Some top shelf news. Penn State has found their new wide receivers coach, Marques Hagan. We'll be talking about him quite a bit. We have some recruiting news to discuss, as well as our Penn State defensive line draft. So a lot to talk about. Welcome into the show, everybody. Man, my throat all of a sudden is full of stuff. All right. Welcome, everybody on YouTube. What's up, Jacob? Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Corey Listoki. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. How are you doing today, Sean?
Pretty good. Happy hump day, Corey. Happy hump day. How are you?
Doing fantastic. It's weird now. I feel like we missed shows or like we're missing something. We only happening once a week now. It just feels like there's something missing in my life. I don't know.
I think it's just me.
Yeah,
but I'm back, man. I'm back. I'm here.
Probably not exactly it. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good to be back. We have obviously some things to discuss. We have a new wide receivers coach, Sean. Is that a Dr. Pepper?
Diet Dr. Pepper.
Diet Dr. Solid.
Yep. Yes. Just to answer your question, yes. And to address your statement, yes. Marques. I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce his last name. Is it Higgins or Hagans? Is it Higgins?
I believe it's Hagans.
Hagans. Okay. So yeah, that's I'm pretty happy with it. If we want to just dive into Mr. Hagans now, we can.
Yeah, why not, right? Because I mean, I think that let's not bury the lead any more than maybe it could be. So like, there's the other things to discuss, but that's the biggest one, right? So let's talk about Mr. Marques Hagans.
Yeah, so he's been at Virginia for many years. I believe he's been the receivers coach. He was the receivers coach since 2011, and then before that he was a GA. He's only been at Virginia. He played at Virginia, so he's really Mr. Virginia. And I was pretty happy with the hire. He's known to be able to develop his guys, known to be able to find diamonds in the rough. And one of the questions was, and one of the reasons Taylor Stubblefield was let go was due to recruiting concerns. And Higgins doesn't have that great of a track record of bringing in blue chip talent to the University of Virginia. But part of the problem with that is the University of Virginia. And they're not a recruiting powerhouse. They haven't been a marquee name in college football in quite a long time. So that was, I think he had a lot of institutional
Restraints.
restraints. That's the word I'm looking for, and it made things a lot tougher for him. But what I will say is he seems to have positive relationships with everybody in the state of Virginia. And this, to me, reads as James Franklin doubling, tripling down on the state of Virginia, because now there's Anthony Poindexter, there's Marques Hagan's, and Jaywan Sider also recruits Northern Virginia a little bit. So this is them really doubling down on recruiting the state of Virginia, and he's a pretty damn good position coach. So overall, I was pretty happy with the hire.
Yeah, I think, Penn State fans I don't know what they were expecting, but I think this is kind of the hire we expected, right? Somebody that off the radar, wasn't on anyone's list particularly, but was a really good fit when you look at it. Penn State has recruited Virginia heavily, especially in the last class, especially in this upcoming class in 2024. And with, I don't want to say talent sort of fleeting the Pennsylvania area, but they needed to recruit Virginia extremely well moving forward. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. There's more, I don't want to say there's more talent, but there really is more talent in Virginia than there is in Pennsylvania, or at least it's very, very close. So you got to hit Virginia hard, and this will allow them to do it. It'll also help, hopefully, in the recruiting realm when it comes to wide receivers, which I just saw Ohio State has 2 of the top 10 receivers in the 2023 class. So, I mean, that's what Penn State's going up against, and we discussed that in the last episode. I agree with what you said about, people saying, oh, well, he hasn't recruited like the top end guys. He hasn't. But like you said, it was mostly because of university restraints, and he has built relationships with a lot of those guys, even though they ended up not coming to Virginia. And I mean, Cam Seldon's a name that stood out to me. Cam Seldon actually visited Virginia basically because he really liked Hagan's. No other real reason why he even went there. And you could kind of sing that same song and dance over and over again when it comes to Marques Hagan's. Recruits really like him, don't necessarily really want to go to Virginia, or sometimes can't go to Virginia. And that's kind of what's been holding him back. You could argue Marques Hagan's at a place like Penn State is going to be fully equipped, and you could argue he could be a really good recruiter for Penn State. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. He cares about the relationships, which I think is right on par with James Franklin and what he preaches with his staff. And then the biggest thing to me, Sean, is Anthony Poindexter. I knew there was a relationship there, but the more I dug, I was like, holy crap, like this is probably their first call, honestly. If it was up to Anthony Poindexter, again, for people that don't know, assistant coach for Penn State, heavy ties to Virginia, obviously, was the GA at Virginia when Marques Hagan's was there. And you just got to think, if it was up to Anthony Poindexter, this was the first person that he told James Franklin to call. And I thought that was it, right? But come to find out, I think it was on a 24/7 podcast, was mentioned that one of Marques Hagan's son is named after Anthony Poindexter, which I did not know. Which, I mean, just again goes to show there probably wasn't even much of an interview here. I mean, as far as, okay, once you're interested, like let's just go ahead and do this. So I don't know when all that took place, but I think it happened pretty easily. And again, I just think it's a really good fit. Marques Hagan's was at Virginia for a long time. He was retained by multiple head coaches, which says something. But I think more importantly, Sean, it says something that he's like the opposite of Taylor Stubblefield to a certain degree as far as not being a lot of places, right? He was at Virginia for a lot longer than he had to be. He was given a lot of different opportunities to leave, and he didn't. And so you never know with college football, but he had offensive coordinator opportunities, I'm sure. I see Marques Hagan's being around for at least as long as Anthony Poindexter is, which who knows how long that is. But I think this is a really stable, secure, solid hire for Penn State.
Yeah, and one of the things Corey preaches about, probably even more than I do, is stability and how important it is to keep a staff intact. And if you're from that school of thought, then this is exactly who you want to hire. Because, like Corey said, Hagan's had plenty of opportunities to leave. And, I mean, you could argue Virginia was holding him back. Because think about it this way, guys. The top 10 players in the state of Virginia are typically a pretty talented group. And you're recruiting against Penn State, you're recruiting against North Carolina, you're recruiting against Virginia Tech, you're recruiting against Maryland, not to mention an Ohio State who will dip their toe in there. An SEC team could come up and, like Georgia, could come up and grab a guy. So when you're at a place like Virginia, who hasn't been a top 15, 20 program in years and years, yeah, it's going to be tough for anybody to recruit there. It'd be tough. It would be tough for anybody, especially if you're not, I don't know, if Nick Saban, if you're not Nick Saban and who decided for some reason to take a job in Charlottesville. I mean, it's a tough place to be able to go against those big schools. So, but Hagan's would still keep Virginia in the mix. Like Corey said, with a guy like Cam Seldon was willing to go visit Virginia when he was getting offered by everybody. And we talked about Cam Seldon on here. We never mentioned Virginia as a school he was going to go to, ever. Virginia never came up because we all knew he wasn't going to Virginia. And it's the same thing with guys that we've gotten from the DMV. Tony Rojas, we were never worried about Virginia coming in and getting them. So, yeah, this is a good hire from a stability standpoint. It's also a high pressure. It's going to be a high pressure job for him because he's not only going to be the wide receivers coach, he's going to be the lead offensive recruiter. And honestly, I'm not sure. It would be interesting to see like what he actually does in that title. But I think it's more of saying, look, as Penn State, we're putting an emphasis on the DMV. And I've always said that Penn State is at its best when it's recruiting Philly well and when it's recruiting the DMV well. And look at all the guys that have come from, on our top 10 lists, two of the four guys that me and Corey actually got to see in our lifetime were both from Virginia, Michael Robinson and Trace McSorley. So when Penn State recruits that area well, they have a chance to compete for Big Ten championships and hopefully national championships. So I think that's James Franklin's mindset. And I'm cool with it. I'm happy with I'm happy with the hire.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. You could build pretty close to a championship caliber team, or at least an elite caliber team, just with the top prospects in New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, or you could get really close. So that's a good strategy moving forward. And look, Penn State really hasn't taken. Penn State's done a good job with Maryland. Hasn't done a fantastic job with New Jersey. Obviously hadn't done a fantastic job with Philadelphia. And until maybe the last 3 years, hadn't done an amazing job with Virginia. So, and really, like when we talk about Virginia, we're not really talking about the western side of Virginia. I mean, there are some guys from over there, but that's not typically who Penn State's trying to target. One final thought from me on Marques Hagan's, and I'm just curious if this was part of the decision on why he decided this was the right time to leave. Very clear he's a family guy. I believe he has 2 sons. Might have a daughter, I'm not sure. But picking up your family and moving them, especially as long as you've been in Virginia, is not easy, right? And so why now? And I think part of it, honestly and sadly, had to do with the shooting that happened last year. From what I've heard, I mean, Hagan's hadn't even really been full-time back yet because he's had to take time off. For people that didn't know, two of the wide receivers were two of the people that were killed during that shooting that were obviously part of Hagan's receiving corps. And the assistant coaches are the ones that really get to know these guys. The assistant coaches are the ones that, you know, you break it down into the position groups, you become very close with those guys. You know, they're almost like sons to these guys, around them 24/7, basically, especially during the season. I know Franklin likes to have them over to their house, but I'm sure the assistant coaches has them over to the house. I'm sure it's the same way in Virginia. And so to lose two guys like that, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, how Marques Hagan's and company went through that. And so I'm just wondering if it just needed a change of scenery, right? Like the coping of having to go through the same places that you've been with, you know, with guys that you had lost that way. I don't think Virginia is 100% over that yet. And I don't think necessarily they should be. And I'm wondering if this is just part of the healing process for him. And I keep thinking about if something like that happened at Penn State, and how do you even move on from that, right? So I am wondering if that is a part of it. And he's, again, I don't think Penn State picks up Marques Hagan's if it's not for Anthony Poindexter. I think in a time like this, maybe Marques Hagan's is trying to get a little bit more support, right? Like he's not going to Penn State and losing all of his support system, which I think is probably important to him at this time. So a little bit of speculation there, but I just think it was a tragic thing that happened, but I think it did play a role in maybe the psyche of what's going on over there right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ignore it because that's the big thing for you. Like, and like you said, Corey, being in that receivers room, and then you lose guys that you're with every day, and it's unimaginable. It really is, and you build these relationships with these guys since they're 15, 16 years old. So do I think it had? Do I think it's part of it could be part of the healing process? Maybe, but that's also speculation, like we said. But yeah, it's sad to think about, and I think having somebody like Poindexter there, who I know they're very close to, they're like brothers. Yeah, it's gonna help, and it's gonna be interesting to see how long we could hold on to Anthony Poindexter too. I mean, I know it's about Hagan's today, but I just think Poindexter's such a star, and it seems, and maybe Elliott turns it around at Virginia. It just seems like Anthony Poindexter's going to be the head coach at Virginia someday. So, just
really
different thought for a different time.
Really think they missed their opportunity by not getting Anthony Poindexter when they could have last year. Who knows what's going to happen, obviously up there, or down there, I guess, for Sean. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Poindexter's a star, but Jaywan Sider's a star too. And I mean, you go through the assistant coaches now. Jaywan Sider is like one of the most tenured coaches behind who? Terry Smith?
Yeah, it's just Terry Smith.
I don't know if anyone else has been there longer.
No, Terry Smith was day one guy, so.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's anyone else, but I mean, Andy Frank, but he's not a coach.
No, it's Sider.
Yeah, so I mean, Penn State has shown the ability, and I think with Pat Kraft will show a better flexing of those muscles to hold on to some guys. But just like Manny Diaz, I mean, Manny Diaz wants to be a head coach again. That's going to happen. I do think, I know we're skipping around here, but I really don't think Manny Diaz is just going to take the first offer that comes around. Now, I really think FAU messed up by not hiring him. I think that was a perfect place for Manny Diaz. Boca Raton, nearby to where all of his recruiting grounds are. I think he could have done exceptionally well at FAU. And they went with the guy who used to coach at Texas. It's escaping me at the moment. But I don't think. Yeah, it was Herman. Yeah. But my point is saying I think Penn State's going to do a really good job, especially moving forward, at keeping these guys until it's the right time, right? And so, I mean, Terry Smith's another guy. Like, it was flirting with it for a while too. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Anthony Poindexter. Yeah, I think he's going to be a head coach soon. Top shelf news. Then we'll get into the PSU and the NFL. Do you have a 5-star review to read? So we got one of those. If you haven't dropped us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, do it. We'll read it on the show, and we'll send you a sticker. The person who gave us the last 5-star review, by the way, have not reached out to us yet. Please do. We will send you a sticker. If you haven't been on our merch store lately, there's actually a couple options now. So just because you got one sticker, if you do something else sticker worthy, we can send you another one now. Recruiting and transfer portal update. We got 2 fan questions. Sean and I will have a question for each other, and then we'll finish with the Penn State defensive line draft. Jacob on YouTube said, "Great statement. Appreciate it." Thank you, Jacob. Means a lot. You guys love the quarterback draft, so hopefully we can keep the excitement going with the defensive line draft. I think Einstein von Braun was the one who said, like, oh, well, they're not going to just do positions. Like, that's correct. Like, we have all sorts of different drafts we can do, and we're excited to do that throughout the offseason. So just buckle up. It should be a good time as far as that. Top shelf news, Sean. I don't think we mentioned this last episode, and I don't even know if it was 100% out by last episode. Maybe it was. But Kevon Lee's entered the transfer portal. Again, it might have been Wednesday. It might have been. I think it might have been Thursday. But
yeah,
regardless,
it feels like a while ago, but I don't think it happened last time.
Yeah, I don't think it did either. But I wanted to make sure we like 100% covered it, because I think a lot of people look at that and be like, oh, well, yeah, of course he went into the portal. I guess I just find it I think it's a little disrespectful, Sean, to act like Kevon Lee is like just another transfer portal entry, right? It's not like this guy came in, didn't play very much, and then just left. Kevon Lee was instrumental in 2020 at keeping the program afloat, you could argue, and going down the stretch there. Ran for a bunch of yards against Michigan in 2020. And then even in 2021, was very instrumental in the offense. And just because he saw that role diminish because 2 really good running backs came in after him, doesn't A, mean he's a scrub, and B, not really make his impact, I guess, less important. The guy played a lot of football for Penn State. He probably saw the writing on the wall, never complained about it, didn't hear anything bad about Kevon Lee for the entire year. When a lot of other people would have just, boom, entered the transfer portal right away, he stuck it out. He started the Purdue game. He caught the game-winning touchdown to beat Purdue, and then continued to work hard, got injured, and still was there and helped this team out all the way through the Rose Bowl. So I have a lot of respect for Kevon Lee. I am excited to see where he ends up if he tries to go south, closer to maybe home. But I think Penn State's in a lot better place because of Kevon Lee, and he's never going to get the credit he deserves. But yeah, I just wanted to give Kevon Lee a couple minutes that he deserved.
No, he was an important guy, and let me put it this way. I'd feel better about him finding success in the portal than I would have Noah Cain last year. And Noah Cain had a decent season at LSU, but I think Kevon Lee could bring more to the table. And that's no knock on Noah. I think a lot of it's out of his control. I think since his injury, he just wasn't that he suffered in 2020. I just don't think he's the same player. But yeah, I think Kevon Lee, he brings toughness. He's pretty good out of the backfield as a receiver, as we saw against Purdue. And yeah, he helped stabilize the program. And he was the incumbent going into this year, but I don't think there was any holding Nick Singleton off, or Kaytron Allen for that matter. And Nick Singleton has the best odds out of any running back to win the Heisman Trophy next year. So he had to go somewhere, especially when you have Kaytron Allen behind him. I'm also, so, best of luck to him, and I think he's going to find success. It's going to be interesting to see how Penn State reacts to this, if they do, and if they do. I think we tweeted out about King Doru, how he just came available from Purdue, and I thought he was a decent back. It's just Purdue barely ran the ball, so he didn't get featured as much as other guys could. But I think a guy like him, yeah, he's kind of what you need in the third back, because London Montgomery's coming in. I don't know if he's going to be ready. And then Cam Wallace, and he's a true freshman. I'm just not sure what we're going to have with him. And as excited as we are about Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, it's hard to get through a regular season with two backs. It's possible neither of them, knock on wood, got hurt this year, but I don't know what next year's going to bring. I mean, look at 2020. I think in 2020 we felt, even after Journey, had to unfortunately medically retire, we still had Noah Kane. We still had Kevon Lee, who ended up being good his freshman year. We still had Keziah Holmes. Am I missing someone? Well, anyway, we still had Noah Kane, who we felt really good about. And then all of a sudden, there was no depth at all. So we could run out of depth real fast at the running back position, because it's a position where guys take a lot of contact, you take a lot of hits. So I would like to look in the portal to see what's out there. But It's going to be a tough sell to get somebody to play third fiddle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if King Doru wants to fill that role, but that's kind of what you're hoping for. And the same token, that's what you're kind of hoping for a quarterback too. I think it was Donnie Collins on his podcast, Penn Stated. You should check it out if you haven't. Said like, hey, Ohio State, they went and got another quarterback from Morgan State. Michigan, they went and got Jack Tuttle from Indiana. Penn State really should try to get another quarterback, and they should try to get another running back. Just don't know if it's going to happen, but they should at least try, and I'm sure they are. Like you said, though, like a guy like King Doru only has 1 year left. Kind of difficult to say, like, you're really only going to see a bunch of snaps if somebody gets hurt. So I get it, but at the same time, a guy like King Doru, I mean, I don't know how much more he can put on film, right? If anything, he just going to Penn State to get a little bit more recognition, maybe clean up some things, and then just get ready for the NFL regardless. And if he thinks Penn State can take him an extra step, then maybe it can. But we'll have to wait and see there. I did want to clarify. I know we clarified it last time, but I want to re-clarify it again. So the transfer portal is closed. However, graduates can still transfer. So nothing's changed there. And on top of that, if you're already in the transfer portal, you can still transfer too. So it's slowed down, but it's not completely stopped. It won't officially 100% reopen again until the spring. Sean, I wanted to mention that Jamari Budden, former linebacker from Penn State, has officially committed, if you will, to transfer to New Mexico State. So he's heading out southwest. And then I want to mention two preferred walk-ons. Ethan Blake just committed to Penn State. From what I've heard, he's super duper fast. Potential gunner. We'll have to wait and see there. And then I'm going to maybe mess up this guy's name, but Carson Kieswetter, double K. He played quarterback and linebacker in high school. I don't know what their plans are for him moving forward, but I thought I'd at least mention those two guys as well as joining Penn State. So wanted to give them some love as well.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of speed. And I think they're going to be playing that kid at quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. Kieswetter. Yeah, he's got a name. It's a bold.
He does have a name.
Here's a guy
it's better than
who has
Bedwetter.
a name. What?
I said it's better than Bedwetter.
So, Corey, quick
yeah.
question. Off topic.
Yeah.
Tony Romo, yay or nay?
Dude, so I don't know. So we never posted, like, I guess people who voted would have seen the results, but Sean, I don't know, you just mad at like the world that day, or but you
Yes.
decided to post
No, I was mad at Tony Romo.
the poll of if whether or not you like Tony Romo or not, or if you think he's annoying. I guess I would
That's
rephrase
what
it.
it was, yes.
He's annoying. Whether or not you like him or not important. What do you think he's annoying as F was exactly what was written. And I'm not sure. I think like 320 people voted, and it was dead split 50-50, which is pretty impressive. Like, probably couldn't do that again if we tried, as far as getting the sampling numbers to exactly come out. I mean, it had to be an even number, first of all, which is basically a 50-50 chance on its own. And then to come out 50-50 is pretty impressive. I don't even know if I voted in that, Sean. But there's the backstory. That's why Sean's asking me this. Is this my fan question asked? So this was what you're...
No. I have another question for you.
Gotcha. I don't think he's annoying. Not yet. And now I don't watch, so I don't have, like, I don't have TV. I mooch off people when I need stuff for, I shouldn't say people, like their family. So don't make me seem like that friend. But I mooch off of people when I need, like, the Fox Sports app, or if I need and then I pay for ESPN Plus and all that shenanigans. But so I don't have CBS and I don't have Paramount Plus. So, and Penn State doesn't play on CBS very often for any sport. Obviously the Auburn game, but I was there. So I don't watch very much CBS as it is. Like the AFC Championship this weekend. Like, if I really wanted to watch it, I'd have to, like, get it up on my computer, and I probably will for the AFC Championship. But I'll have to get it on my computer, then share my screen from my computer to the TV.
Right.
Like, it's a lot of work. So I don't do it for just every CBS Sunday, I guess what I'm trying to say. So I don't get Tony Romo. I don't get a weekly dose of Tony Romo, like you do, Sean. So I can't sit here and say I'm a very, I guess, reliable source when it comes to this, but I don't think he's annoying. I think he provides insight. I think he can be annoying, like a lot of quarterback commentators can be, but I would rather him be at least somewhat informative than, and I know it's play-by-play versus color, but like Joe Buck, someone on Twitter put all of Green Bay's, like, losses in the playoffs for, like, the last 15 years. And obviously most of them were on Fox Sports when Joe Buck was there. And every single one of his, like, game-ending calls was so boring, so awfully boring. I'm like, this is just not fun. So I'm going to long-winded answer of saying, no, I'm not on. He might be annoying, but he's not as annoying as F, I guess, maybe is a better way to put it.
Not AF. Okay.
Not yet, at least.
So I believe he's definitely met that threshold. And when he first came around, I mean, he was different, and I tried to get into it because he did provide different insight than we were used to, which is cool. I mean, that's cool. But I just think he's very put on. I don't think he prepares like he should, and I don't know. He gets to me. Like, when he calls Dolphins games, I actually mute the TV because I can't listen to him because I'm already stressed enough, and I just can't deal with him that day. And I'm like, no.
You give him the Matt Millen treatment?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Speaking of Matt Millen,
yeah, we might hear his name again tonight. So, I think the perfect balance is Dan Orlovsky, and I think he's not getting enough love. And
you do love Dan Orlovsky.
I think he does it right because he's not like a boring guy. It's not like listening to Tony Dungy and Al Michaels, who have about 150 years of if you put both their ages together. That's unlistenable too. I mean, believe me, I'm not saying you got to be a corpse up there, but just turn it down a little. That's all.
That was the funniest thing with Chris Collinsworth, where when Mahomes threw that ball into the dirt and then he goes, that's such a phenomenal play. I was peeing my pants because he literally said that. And, like, I get what he was trying to say, but
that's a phenomenal play there, Mike. Nobody throws the ball in the dirt like Patrick Mahomes.
That was like,
And
that would be like what a lot of our listeners, that's how they would think I would be like if I was commentating color for Sean Clifford.
that's how some of those same people will be with Drew Aller next year too.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Drew
So
Aller's
get
gonna
ready for
spike
that.
one 2 feet in front of him. Like no one has ever spiked the football into the ground like that. That was so impressive. He put a divot in the ground. Um, yeah. Speaking of that, well, not that specifically, but of NFL, we can go to PSU in the NFL next, because why not? It's dwindling down though, Sean. We starting to lose Penn State players. I think 19 NFL players played in the wild card round, and now I believe there will be no representatives from Penn State in the AFC Championship. The 49ers have Robbie Gould and Kevin Givens. Philadelphia has Miles Sanders, obviously. Do they have anyone on defense? I don't think so.
No. I think it's
I don't
just
think so.
Miles.
So there's only 3. So they went from 19 to 3 pretty quickly there. Obviously, Buffalo losing kind of hurt. Ryan Bates was on there as well as Daquan Jones. So that didn't help things. But anyway, he got. I mean, I don't know. I feel like because Robbie Gould didn't have like an illustrious career at Penn State, I feel like Penn State fans really like if Sam Ficken was doing what Robbie Gould was doing right now, Penn State fans would be like the most obnoxiously annoying fan base in the world if Sam Ficken was doing what Robbie Gould's doing. Like Robbie Gould is like breaking history right now for people that don't know. The dude, and we did not jinx it last week, so we can say it again this week. Dude has not missed a field goal in the playoffs in his career. And it's not like he's hitting one a game. The dude's hit like 4 this past week. I think he had 3 the previous week. I mean, he's been hitting a bunch of field. He has been the reason they've won these games, which is just, I mean, and they weren't even all short. I think he hit a 50-yarder this past week too. So he's doing it. Did you see the video of him hitting the goalpost in pregame?
That was cool. Yeah, I did. That was awesome.
Who was the Dallas kicker? Is it Bill Maher?
Bill Maher is political commentator.
Oh, sorry.
Brett Maher, I think, or Brett Maher.
Brett. Well, I always get those mixed up with
someone. Bill Maher says his name one way, and then
Maher says it a different way.
I believe that's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And then Maher's over there. He can't even put it in between the uprights, and Gould's over there hitting the goalpost on purpose. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, that guy's. I mean, it's just incredible what he's been able to do. And the 49ers was good old Mr. Irrelevant. Continue to. Somebody said that. I don't know who it was. NFL Network, maybe. I'm not sure who it was. Listed Brock Purdy as a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, 17 rushes, 90 yards. He had a good game. Giants looked awful. Saquon Barkley, only 9 rushes, 61 yards. So in 2 playoff games, Saquon Barkley had like maybe 20 rushes, I think. So that's pretty inexcusable in my opinion. I wanted to mention Connor McGovern. McGovern played a lot for the Cowboys this year, and he's entering free agency. Obviously, all the talk is surrounding Saquon Barkley, but Connor McGovern might get paid some substantial amount of money. I'd be curious what they do with him. And the Kevin Givens obviously is still kicking. He was hurt for a while. I've mentioned that before, but so I think he's still trying to get back into the swing of things. Very good rotation over there, obviously, so they don't necessarily need him to be super duper good. Saquon Barkley, Sean, think he stays at the Giants? Do you think he gets paid somewhere else? What do you think is going to end up happening with him?
Well, I mean, who, if he doesn't go to the Giants, who the odds-on favorite are to land Saquon, right?
No, the way you're smiling, I have a feeling you're thinking, is it the Dolphins, really?
It's the Miami Dolphins. And so...
That'd be a pretty good offense.
It would be. But those injuries do scare me with Saquon. And I've got to be real. And so wearing my Penn State, I literally have a Saquon Barkley hat when I'm wearing the Saquon Barkley hat, I'm like, well, he's Saquon, and he's the best running back in football, which I believe he is. But he has 2 knee injuries. He's had ankle issues since he was in college. And for a
He
running
had
back,
2 knee injuries?
I think he tear his ACL twice? Maybe he did.
Just once.
Okay. Yeah, I mean he's banged up a lot, and that would concern me when you're thinking about paying him a ton of money. And it's not my money, which is the cool thing, but that is money that we could use that the Dolphins could use in other places. And maybe the Giants do sign him, and Saquon doesn't strike me as a guy that desperately wants to leave New York. I think he seems really bought in, and if they pay him, enough, I think he would be willing to take a bit of a hometown discount. I don't think he would do the same thing with the Dolphins necessarily. Now, the state of Florida doesn't have a state income tax. So, and state of New York certainly does. So maybe that factors in. But if we can get him for the right deal, sure, because he's a great running back. And like you said, you add him, you add him with Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. He gives you a little bit of an underneath threat in the passing game, and he's a great running back. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be cool with it for the right price. But I also want to I want to highlight while I'm here, I want to highlight Micah. Like, Micah was unbelievable in that game. And if Dak doesn't throw the game away, essentially, and they don't run the play, that last play of the game was so Cowboys. They just line Zeke up at center, and he gets obliterated, and they throw to the receiver, who also gets lit up, and the game just ends abruptly. But Micah was a monster in that game, and I don't think we could talk about him enough. And yeah, Robbie Gould. I mean, he might not be a top 10 kicker to ever kick at Penn State, but he is clearly, the best kicker to ever come out of here.
Yeah, I will say this. Saquon Barkley played 13 games last year and played in all, 16, 17 games this year. So I would feel pretty safe about the investment. I get it. ACLs scare you, but I think you're far away from that now. The ankles weren't an issue this year, where I would feel comfortable making a considerable amount of, I think it was Stephen A. Smith that said the Giants offense was basically Saquon Barkley and a bag of chips. And that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, I'd be curious to see where the market values him. And your point about New York, he makes probably a lot more money as just being in the New York market than he does somewhere else. So I wonder if that plays a role. The only place that's kind of like that, Miami is sort of like that, and you get the income tax evasion. But I just don't know. I mean, New York is kind of where Saquon's from originally, right? And so,
right.
I think I'd be interested, and I think he likes Daboll.
Yeah, he's finally a coach that knows how to use them.
Yeah. So we'll see on that. This is not a Giants podcast, but it is interesting to see where Saquon Barkley could end up. Obviously, I want to see him somewhere where he can be successful. So we shall see. Let's move on. I think that's a good segue to our 5-star review before we get into the other nitty-gritty stuff of the show. So we haven't got very many 5-star reviews lately. I think this is the 104th. Would really like to see us get to 110 before the end of February. I think that's a reasonable goal. Can we get 6 in the month of February? Again, Apple Podcasts is a way to do it. You write a review, we'll send you a sticker. This is, by the way, I think this one happened pretty close to just after recording, because, or did I read this one? I don't think I did. The one that has a funny title. I don't think I read it on the podcast. Well, either way, I'm going to read it again.
Yeah, just do it again if we already saw it. I like hearing good things about us.
I don't think. Oh, maybe I did. No, I don't think so. Okay. Anyway. Oceans, potions, motion, lotion. Did I read this? I don't think so.
I know I've read it, but I don't know if you read it on here.
Oceans, potions, motion, lotion. Love the podcast. Great banter and chemistry between the two of you. Feels like I may fly on a Chili's or Champs wall when you guys post. Love the content. Keep her up. Side note, considering the lack of 2023 size of defensive tackle, Drew Aller at defensive tackle next year? Only kind of kidding. I don't think I read that.
I don't think you read it either. I think we just read it. Yeah, thank you. And Drew Aller, defensive tackle. Corey, go ahead. What do you think? I'm going to be a no, but.
Well, I guess that depends on how good Bo Prabula is.
There you go.
Thank you for that. I love the motion, ocean, lotion, potion, motion, lotion. That was funny. That was from Mallow56. So thank you, Mallow. Drop us more of those, please. We appreciate those. Recruiting. I wanted to mention a couple guys, Sean, and then I'll let you kind of go. I don't have as much. If you guys, again, want the 2024 breakdown for recruiting, A, it's very, very fluid. B, we just talked about it for like an hour and a half on the last episode. So go check that out. I did want to mention that three guys I want to mention. Keelan Adams, wide receiver from Virginia. Chance Wiggins, wide receiver from Virginia. And Tayshawn Young-Steve, is that how you say it? Wide receiver from Virginia. All three of those guys are wide receivers from Virginia. Marques Hagan, you want to be a great wide receivers coach at Penn State? Go get like 2 of the 3 of those. That'd be fantastic. Appreciate it. I just wanted to mention those guys because those are Virginia wide receivers that Penn State was already interested in before Hagan's got there. Would like to see those guys in blue and white.
Yeah, and I think James Franklin would too. And this was supposed when we said it on I think the podcast right after Stubbs was let go, that receiving recruiting is going to be very important this year because this previous class, while a very good class, we only brought in Carmelo Taylor. So as a true freshman, that is. So yeah, one of the ways, and it's interesting. I was listening to the Lions 247 podcast before coming on here, and one of the places that they said that Marques Hagan has good relationships is in Virginia Beach, and that's just somewhere that Penn State hadn't tapped into as much. And you look at want to get his name right, Tayshawn Young-Steve. He's from Virginia Beach. Adams is from Virginia Beach. So, I mean, having a guy that has relationships with all those coaches, yeah, that works out. And look at it this way, guys. So, relationships with high school coaches, he still got guys from these schools and from these areas. He just wasn't getting the same guys we were getting and the same guys that Ohio State was getting. But those relationships with the high school coaches are still there. The relationships with the communities, they're still there. He just wasn't able to reel in the big fish because of the institutional restraints at a place like the University of Virginia. So James Franklin is betting on and banking on on Hagan's ability to be able to help reel in those bigger recruits. And I mean, the early returns seem to be promising, and the recruits seem to be responding well to him. So let's hope that this keeps moving in the right direction, and we're able to, because we're probably going to be trying to land. Corey, you could chime in too. Probably about 3 or 4 receivers this class, because we're only going to have Cephas for 1 season. KLS is probably gone after this season, if I had to guess. And we're only going to have 1 more year with McLean. So, yeah, this is a very important recruiting class with the receivers.
Yeah, and you got Jaden Dotton hit the portal as well, so he's gone.
Yep, good point.
And you just don't know with everybody else. You don't know what Amari Evans is going to be. You don't know what Anthony Ivy's going to be. You don't know what Johnson's going to be. You don't know what Saunders is going to be. So until you know more, you gotta kind of have to take some insurance policy there. So yeah, I agree with you, and can't stress it enough. Like Virginia is for coaches. That's the name of this episode for a reason. I mean, it's Marques.
Is that the name?
It is.
Love it.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I don't provide much recruiting analysis, but we do come up with really good podcast titles. So, another like this. There's another like I think this is the last big recruiting weekend before the dead period. Sean, there's going to be a signing period in February to end the 2023 class. The 2023 class, as far as wide receivers has got quiet. So I don't know if that's done, if they're not, maybe they're happy with McLean and Cephas moving forward, and there wasn't anyone else that they were really going to take unless they couldn't get one of those guys, but they seem pretty happy there. Really, the only 2023 guy, Sean, that I think people need to pay attention to is our boy Ono. Chimdi Ono, an offensive tackle, down to Ole Miss, Michigan State, Penn State, and Rutgers, will be making his decision on National Signing Day, which is February 1st, the Wednesday. Which is weird, it's on a Wednesday, or excuse me, like the 1st, but that the Wednesday's on the 1st kind of throws you off a little bit. But anyway, I'm a little nervous there about that one. I don't know. I think he's kept his cards pretty close to the vest. I don't know if anyone really knows where he's going to end up. Part of me thinks Ole Miss might be too far away. That's complete speculation, but I just feel like he's been kind of in this area. He was originally committed to Old Dominion. I just feel like that's a game changer going all the way down there. But that's complete speculation. We'll have to wait and just kind of see on that one. Penn State, very, very, I think probably was in a lead for a litted bit, but I mean, visited Ole Miss, going to visit Michigan State. I mean, who knows where he's going to end up? But Penn State would love to add another offensive tackle to the 2023 class. I mean, you could argue that 2023 class could end up being like one of the best offensive line classes of all time. I mean, 4-star Ono, you got Javen Williams, you got Alex Burkmeyer, you got Anthony Dunco. Why can I never say his name ever? Donka.
I think it's Donka. Yeah.
Donka. I don't know why I can't say it the first time. It's like Schlaffer. Which, by the way, I saw Rappelier and Schlaffer ended up in the top 10 for tight ends for Penn State too. So that was for on 3. So that was nice.
That's how we see them too.
Yeah. I'm very, very excited about Rappelier. But anyway, Sean, other people. Oh, there's one other person I was going to mention. Wide receiver, just since we're talking about wide receivers pretty much every episode now. I was going to mention Josiah Brown, 4-star guy from New York, number 1 player from New York. He just visited this past weekend as well. And I think he's wide receiver, but I think he's technically listed as an athlete. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I think they're recruiting him as a receiver, yeah. So that's going to be an interesting one because it's a little outside of it is outside of where Hagan has coached. He's only coached in Virginia, so it's going to be interesting to see how he does when he's recruiting a little bit outside of his comfort zone, but time will tell.
What else you got, Sean?
What else have I got?
Recruiting wise, anything?
Yeah, just the other junior days coming up. It looks like a pretty star-studded cast from what I've seen. I don't think I've seen anything with free content as far as who's visiting, but it does look like a pretty stellar group, and maybe we could get a commit or two from this weekend. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm with too. It's just the 2024 class to me, Sean, it's just so difficult right now because there's so many names being thrown around all over the place.
Right.
It's just hard to really, like, we're not even to the blue and white game yet, right? Where you hit the blue and white game, you start figuring out like who Penn State's really going after for the next 6 months. And right now, I think it's more than this, but my analogy is it's like throwing things against the wall and seeing which ones are sticking. And they're just trying to get a bunch of guys to junior day and see, who's really interested. It would also be hilarious to know, has anyone ever said they had a bad time at a visit, like straight up said, like on Twitter, terrible time at Penn State, hope I never come? Like, has anyone ever said that before?
In the old days, yes, but not under James Franklin, no. When we didn't have a real recruiting staff, yes, that's when they wouldn't have good times. Sometimes.
That's a good point.
But not in the 21st century.
Now, like, I've heard stories, obviously, of bad recruiting visits.
Yeah.
But like publicly, like, went to Penn State, that was disappointing, or you know what I'm saying? So
no, I mean, they're the best at hosting visits. Really, it seems that way to me.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Like I said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like I think that was a good point, Corey, about like you really like there are a lot of guys right now that Penn State's recruiting. Like you see all these offers out, and I think literally we have a few hundred offers out. So out of all those offers, if some guy called James Franklin today and said, I want to commit, they're not necessarily what we would call a take. So you could have an offer, but you're not necessarily green lighted to take them because we're waiting on other people, or maybe we're waiting to see you run in person. Maybe we don't know what your speed is. So maybe Penn State wants to take a look at you in person. So that stuff's all going to be sorted out. If not by the blue-white game, it's going to be sorted out in June, in July. So that's when we'll start repeating a lot of these names. We'll start knowing these guys better and get a better feel on everything. So I just kind of want to back up your point a little bit there.
Appreciate that. I did not pay you to say that. I did see that the twins, Jacob and Jared Smith from Connecticut, both had Penn State in their top 10. That just came out a couple hours ago. They're both in the top 20. So, defensive end Jared Smith and defensive end Jacob Smith. Too many J's there. Got me confused for a second. All right, well, let's not dwell on it. We can just move on over to some fan questions. Keep the party started here. Kind of one funny, or we really emptied out the mailbag, so we're definitely going to need some mailbags for next week. Just FYI. So definitely need you guys to hit the questions hard for next week. Oh,
if you're listening out there.
Oh, I kind of feel bad.
Why?
Because Einstein von Braun DM'd us the question. I totally missed it. He DM'd us on Saturday the question.
Well, we can read it.
You know what? We'll just use that as my question since I liked his question more than my question. So we'll be fine. Okay. So let me pull up the first question, and we will roll from there. Fan question time. Again, at Hardcore PSUFB. Drop us a question on Twitter, DM us, whatever you need to do. We'll read them on the show, and we'll answer them. First question comes from Joey House. Can Nick Singleton win the Heisman splitting carries with Katron Allen? Think first of all, just him winning the Heisman without Katron Allen, I think it's pretty difficult. It's just hard for running backs to win the Heisman in general nowadays. I will say this. I am excited for the opportunity. Remember when Saquon Barkley was going on that little bit of a Heisman run, especially during the after that Michigan game, and like Penn State had like the whole campaign thing for him. That'd be really cool to see that, whether it's for Nick Singleton or Katron Allen or Drew Aller. It would be cool to see that come back, right? Just to have that kind of, I don't know, swag to it. But if a running back was able to win the Heisman, yes, I mean, I don't think Nicholas Singleton can win it, assuming Katron Allen is getting the amount of carries he got last year. And I don't really know why they wouldn't give Katron Allen the carries. So, no, I don't think he can. And I would rather him not win the Heisman and Penn State do better. You look at their numbers, right? I mean, combined, they outran, I think, everybody in the country. Definitely had more touchdowns than everybody because I think they ended up like almost 30. So, yeah, I'm going to say no, Nicholas Singleton cannot win the Heisman splitting carries with Katron Allen.
I disagree. I think he could win the Heisman splitting carries. I point you to Reggie Bush and Lendell White. So back in the day, Lendell White and Reggie Bush, they both shared the backfield at USC, and they shared the backfield with Matt Leinart, who won the Heisman Trophy in 2004. So it's difficult, and Reggie was special. Like, he was the first or second best running back I've ever seen in college football. So he was, like, different. And I think it's possible if Nick Singleton is on that level, but on that level is, like, with Reggie Bush and Saquon Barkley, and it's a very small list of people. So if he's that good, yeah, it's possible. Still very difficult. I agree with Corey that it's difficult. It would be difficult even without Katron Allen. And Penn State, just for whatever reason, we don't win Heisman trophies here. So really, the Heisman Trophy, in my mind, it's a bit overhyped. I don't think the best player always wins it, especially if the best player is a defensive player that year. But to answer your question directly, is it possible? Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah, I guess it is possible. But man, I mean, even go back to 2005, right? When Reggie won it, or whenever he won it, that was still a different year or different time, different era than it is now, right? Like, running backs won it back then. Just doesn't happen very much anymore. And I don't know when that exactly happened, but it's just the amount of passing touchdowns. I think that's what everyone just cares about. And it just kind of, it is what it is. I would love to see it, but could also see something very similar happen to what would happen, in 94. If Penn State is that super team, some of those votes kind of get pushed around and shared and might end up hurting you. Let's go to the next question. I'm going to need this to show up on the screen before I try to read this person's name because it is too small on my little screen. We'll give it a second for it to go onto the big screen. But their question is, if you could change the schedule and pick any team to have a non-conference home and home with over the next 2 years, who would it be? And this is from
Crombulus Michael. He's one of my buddies that I've been friends with since we were in 3rd grade. So
there we go.
Mike Royerbeck, hello.
Friend of the show. Friend of the show.
Yep.
Well, Crombulus. So I have this answer pretty easily, actually. But Sean, I'll let you go first.
So in 2025, there is an opening that we share with another team, a team I despise, and I would love to play them, and it's Notre Dame. Old rivalry. back in the late 70s and through the 80s into the early 90s. I hate them. Recruiting, we both share a recruiting area, and there's an opening. I forget which week in 2025, but I have checked both schedules, and it would work. And I'd be fine with playing them at a neutral site. And there's only a few teams I would do that for, and I think Notre Dame is one of them. So my answer would be Notre Dame.
Neutral site should be banned from existence.
They should be, but certain teams I would do it for.
So you're saying you're a neutral site pushover?
Yeah, it depends on the team.
I wouldn't do it for anybody.
I would play them in Indy.
I mean, I wouldn't mind going to Indy, but that's besides the point. Mine's easy. It'd be Colorado. Mostly because I'm selfish and I just want to go out to Colorado. I've never been there. Would love to go to Boulder. Okay. Secondly, I would love to roll Colorado at home and just absolutely shut up Deion Sanders. And some of the videos and montages and things that they come out with over there is just embarrassing. Like, I think we tweeted the one about the assistant coach telling them to stand up and sit your ass down, stand up, sit your ass. Like, that was annoying and stupid. But then, like, they just post a lot of that stuff, like, constantly. And, look, I think it's going to blow up in their face. I know they brought in some serious guys. We argued with Higgins on whether, via text message, whether or not Colorado was going to be a 7-win team, and I think is what Higgins said they might be able to accomplish. I went through their schedule. I mean, I don't think they're even going to win 4 or 5 games. I mean, they've got, as tough as the Pac-12 schedule can be, they have it. They got to play Utah. They got to play Oregon. They got to play USC. They got to play UCLA. They got to play at Washington State. Like, I don't know how they win any of those games. And they have TCU in the non-conference. So, and Colorado State's not a pushover any year either, given the rivalry there, which is a great rivalry. So, that's not the point, though. The point is I would love to go out to Boulder. Never been there. Heard it's beautiful. Heard it's a lot of fun. Really need to get there for a game. And would love for them to come to Penn State and get absolutely obliterated, because that would be funny. Honestly, if they scheduled the game in 2025, I doubt Deion Sanders would even be there at that point. So, for better or worse.
Yeah, I know you. I know. I'm happy.
Oh, we lost you. Please.
I had to move my cat.
I was gonna say, please tell me it was the cat.
Yeah, I had to move my cat. So, I know you have some Deion takes. I'm happy you picked Colorado. And a lot of the videos, it almost reminds me of, like, and it's a different thing, but like I'm watching an Andrew Tate video, like the way like he talks, and it's kind of, I'm almost feeling like, all right, I feel like I'm being scammed right now, and that this is all just like empty stuff, and it's not really, there's not a lot of meat on the bone, but that's kind of the way I look at it. It just seems a bit cheesy, kind of like Andrew Tate. And if you don't know who Andrew Tate is, don't look him up. He's a lot of things. And Deion, but that is who he is at the same time. That, like, he is an eccentric person, and he's always been that way. And look, man, he does bring in the recruits. And I think where he could get in trouble is, I think it could be a blessing and a curse, is what I'm saying. And in the recruiting world, yeah, this works. And he won a lot of games at Jackson State. But it's kind of easy to win games at Jackson State when you're recruiting 5- and 4-star guys, and those teams are recruiting just 2-star guys, maybe a 3-star guy mixed in. So it's easier to win games there. And I would probably put the over-under next year at 5.5 or 6 for Colorado, because I agree with you. I have seen their schedule. It's tough. And I think the Pac-12 in general, Joel Klatt made a good point today. They might have the best group of quarterbacks in the country going into next year. And I think this could be a tough year to start at Colorado. It'll get easier when the LA teams leave, but he could be in for a tougher year than I think he's anticipating, and that could hamper his recruiting and Twitter theatrics.
Yeah. I will say their photo shoot in the snow is cool. I'll give him that. Okay, I want to. This is my question. I'm going to take Einstein von Braun's question and use it as my own. And he says, I'm sitting here watching the Eagles-Giants with the wife, who is an Eagles fan. It dawns on me that Miles Sanders and Saquon Barkley have similar pro stats. Not identical, but arguably similar. Both had great Penn State careers, legit RB1 that helped to lead the team with the same quarterback. Question is, why isn't Sanders held in the same regard or held in as high of a regard as Saquon? I'm guessing it's because he was RB1 for only 1 year, where Saquon had 2. I don't think that's why, Einstein. I think the real reason why is he came right after Saquon.
Yep.
If Miles Sanders came in after, no offense, but this last little bit of a lull before Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, I think Miles Sanders would look really good. But you're arguably going behind, following up the act of a generational player, and that's just not easy to do. Miles Sanders is really good, and will never, for that reason, get the credit he can even win the Super Bowl. Penn State fans won't look at him the same way. Just how it is. Just how it is, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Robbie Gould earlier, and it's a similar. Well, it's similar and it's different. Robbie Gould wasn't good at Penn State. Miles Sanders was good. Like, people forget, like, he was a good player. Fumbled too much, but he was a good player. And the worst thing about how people perceive him is he followed up Saquon Barkley, and I think it's just that simple. And I've always liked Miles. I always have. Even when he was at Penn State, I still liked him because I was able to do my best to say, okay, Saquon is like an alien, and we've never had anybody like him, as my cat continues to come up here. And Miles is a really good back. Like, really good, and it was awesome having him here. And it's just hard to follow up a guy as legendary as Saquon Barkley, and I think it's just that simple.
Lambda says on YouTube that Dion is definitely a top G with a winky face. Yeah, that's fair. We'll give him that.
Top G.
Sean, what's your question?
Okay, so if Marty McFly came to you in the DeLorean and he said, I just came back from the future, Penn State's going to win 10 games. They're going to go 10-2. They're going to go to a New Year's Six Bowl. Would you take that? Would you just say, okay, that's fine? Or would you say, no, I'm going to roll the dice. How about this? So I'll say 10-2 and we win the bowl game. So 11-2 again. Or you say, no, I'm going to roll the dice, and I'm going to see if we could go 11-1 or 12-0, or we could go 9-3. What say you, Mr. Listoki?
Does that 11-2 include a win over Michigan or Ohio State?
I don't know. Just 11-2.
Because to me,
and we're 10-2 during the season. Right. I will say that.
To me, that's part of it, right? Like if you can, if Marty tells me that it's 100% you beat Ohio State next year and you go 10-2, I would take that. If it's 10-2 or 11-2 the same way it was this year, I would roll the dice. So I just think you got to do better than you got to beat Michigan or Ohio State. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. You've got to find a way next year to beat either Michigan or Ohio State. And honestly, I know Michigan's returning a bunch, but you get them at home. I know it's going to be in November, so it's probably not going to be the whiteout, but I don't care. It's like November 4th, I think, or something like that. You gotta beat them. You gotta find a way to beat Michigan at home. I mean, I just don't. There's no ifs and or buts about it. Like you just got to do it. So if Marty can't promise me a win over Ohio State or Michigan, I'm rolling the dice because I think Penn State has got to find a way to at least beat one of them this year. Like I don't think they have to get to the playoff next year. I don't think that's where the expectation should be, but they have got to beat one of those two teams.
It's a fair question, but it doesn't totally answer my question. What would you do?
I guess I'm rolling the dice. If I don't know for sure that they are if they're gonna beat Michigan or Ohio State. I only know that they go 11-2. My assumption would be that they lose to Michigan and Ohio State, right? I mean, that would be the normal thing to assume. So then I'm rolling the dice.
That's what I would do too, because I don't know enough information. So I would roll the dice, and I think this team is definitely good enough to win 10 games, so I would trust the guys to at least be able to get that. I mean, I think they could be good enough to win 11 games. You know, if I'm being completely honest. If all goes correctly, they could be good enough to do that. So I would roll the dice as well.
Let me pull up the schedule real fast. Don't have it as my wallpaper yet.
I like the way I like the way it sets up. I can't lie. I mean, the September's we have a few testers, and then we basically play nobody, and then we play Ohio State, and then it's Indiana, Maryland, and then Michigan. So
yeah, I mean,
I kind of like the way it sets up for us.
The at Illinois game scares me, right? I mean, first road game.
Tough. Yep.
Thankfully, it won't be the first Power 5 game, which is nice. So you get West Virginia at home. People are kind of not taking West Virginia seriously. Like they're still a Power 5 team. Like they're going to have a good team compared to Delaware. And Delaware's not a bad team either, just by the way. But that's not my point. My point is on the road at Illinois, like Brett Bielema's squad is going to make you beat them, not beat themselves, shorten the game. You got to go in there and not make mistakes. And with that's only Drew Allar's third start. So take that for what you will. Then you get Iowa at home. Iowa still has Brian Ferentz as far as I know. So move on. You're at Northwestern. I think, maybe a couple of years ago you're worried about that, but just now, I mean, Northwestern looked awful this year, and I think the talent gap is now really far. Like 2015 when they lost, talent gap wasn't as far. It's really far now. So I can't lose that. And then like you said, like Penn State gets a bye week, and then they get UMass, and then they get Ohio State. I think that works out perfectly. I think we tweeted at one time, like they finally figured out how to schedule like an SEC team. So I think that works out really well. Then you come back and you get Indiana at home. Indiana looked, I mean, we told everybody in the summer last year, we told everybody that Indiana was going to be awful, and they were indeed awful. I guess you got to be a little bit worried about Maryland being a trap game at Maryland before Michigan at home, but Penn State's done so well at Maryland, and Penn State travels so well to Maryland. Yeah. It's really not even an away game. So I think, and that's November 4th is the Maryland game, Sean. That's about right when you like to predict Maryland starts falling apart. So
that's right. If we play them earlier in the year, I'd be a little more afraid.
Gotcha. And then there's the Michigan game. So I was off by a week. So it's November 11th. And they have Rutgers after. So there's no looking ahead. I mean, that is the season. And then who knows? Like maybe Michigan State bounces back, but I'm not expecting them to all of a sudden be close to 10 wins, right? Like they'd be happy to get to 8 wins, I feel like, next year.
Yeah, for sure. They got to just get the ship back on.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is you look at those games in order of like trying to see those 2 losses that Marty McFly gives me, like, okay, Ohio State, because it's on the road. I think we'd agree Ohio State's higher up than Michigan. And then Michigan. And then, Sean, this sounds silly, but early in the year, I think I'm more scared about Illinois on the road than I am Michigan State on the road.
I am too. I don't disagree at all. I think I've said this before. As long as Bielema's there, I mean, we could, find him kind of to be a prickly pear, but the guy coach. I mean, and his teams are going to be hard nosed, and you have to go in there and beat them. I mean, they almost went to the Big House and beat Michigan. I mean, if they called that offensive pass interference, which they should have, they would have beaten Michigan. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game. But I'm kind of happy we play them early. I think it could kind of be like the Iowa game in 2017 a little bit for us, where we get a good test. I hope it's not that good of a test where I'm sweating until the last play of the game. But it will be, it'll get us ready to play the Ohio States and the Michigans in the world.
Yep, I'm with you. So that's what I'm just saying. Like, if there was a third game there that was like super duper scary, maybe different conversation. But yeah, I'm rolling those dice, Sean, to answer your question. Thank you for all the fan questions. Appreciate you guys. Sean, did you get the camera to work?
I did. My lovely girlfriend actually bought me an adapter, so I was able to plug it in, and looks Dude, good. I mean, I think I look great.
You look fantastic. I can't believe it took me an hour into this thing to realize.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you for fantastic. The camera, Corey. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. That's fantastic. That's awesome. You looking spiffy. Look at that. That's funny. I can't believe it took me that long to realize it. Okay. Well, the only thing left to do is what I think is going to become everyone's new favorite part of the show. And that is not your boy's question that is still up there. But is the Penn State draft. Again, for everybody, the Penn State draft, there's no like, oh, did they do well in the NFL? It's whatever the heck we want it to be. So it can be anything. It can be everything or nothing. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, we want to draft these guys. We're kind of drafting them. So that's just how we're going to do it. And I know that doesn't give much kind of criteria, but it worked out really well for the quarterback one. If you haven't seen it, that's on YouTube. It's on social medias. We each draft 5 players. We take turns, and we go from there. Not snake draft. And I will say, and so anyway, this week we're doing defensive line. Let me get my coin toss. You called it last time, so I guess I'll call it in the air this time. And I'll go with heads, Sean.
Do it up.
And it is flipping. And it was tails. You can't see it, but it was tails. So, Sean, you get to go first yet again. And with the first pick in the Hardcore PSU FB defensive line draft, Sean Kane, you're on the clock.
All right. I'm not going to have to take my whole 12 minutes.
No. And I'm not allowed to trade up. I don't think I can give you. I don't think I can offer you a first rounder next year either.
Yes. I'm going to take Courtney Brown. Courtney Brown, almost an overshadowed guy because LeVar was there. But, I mean, this guy was unbelievable at Penn State. Still leads Penn State all-time in sacks. Was 2-time All-Big Ten. He was a consensus All-American in 1999. Defensive Lineman of the Year in the Big Ten. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in 1999. So he got that over LeVar. Was number 1 pick to the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunately, his NFL career was cut short with some injuries. But, yeah, I mean, the guy was an unbelievable player. Finished his college football career with 33 sacks. That's an NCAA record, and 70 tackles for loss. And was a finalist for the Nagurski, Bednarik, and Lombardi Award. So, fantastic player. If you haven't watched, if you're a younger fan, if you haven't watched Courtney Brown highlights, definitely go watch them. He was very, very impressive guy. Also loved his number. He was number 86. I think it's a very underused number. So, yeah.
Ocho Seis.
Yeah, and from South Carolina, where we don't usually get guys from, but credit to Joe for going down there and getting him.
I agree. The 70 TFLs to me is what really stands out in all of that. Like, that's an insane number. But I actually wasn't going to take him first, believe it or not. And that is because I'm taking Mike Reed with my first pick. And I think those guys are 1-2, in my opinion.
That's who I had second. So,
but the reason why I would have gone with Mike Reed is because I think defensive tackle, if I'm trying to build a defensive line, which that's not necessarily what we're trying to do, I think value-wise, I think Mike Reed is by far the best defensive tackle that Penn State's ever had. So won the Outland, won the Maxwell, was fifth in the Heisman, was a captain for 2 seasons where Penn State went undefeated. 89 tackles in 1969, which is just trying to understand like how that's even possible for a defensive tackle in the 60s to do something like that. I know they run it a lot, but still, I mean, that's an insane amount of tackles. And if that wasn't enough, Sean, he also wrestled at Penn State.
Wow, I actually didn't know that, and I
believe it was in 1967. Why are you looking at me like that?
Oh, I actually wasn't trying to.
It looked like you were trying to like give me a poker face, like you were trying to read who I was going to take next, so you could figure out who you were going to take in front of me.
Nah, I swear I have my guy in mind.
I'm ready when you are. That's all I have. I mean, I think Mike Reed. I think the top picks are, I guess, less. You don't have to defend them as much, in my opinion, right? Like, I think it's just Mike Reed stands. Like, you asked most people, I think they would have taken Mike Reed and Courtney Brown, maybe one before the other, whatever. But I mean, you ask your grandpa or whoever, depending on how old you are, like Mike Reed is the dude that has stood the test of time. I mean, there's probably guys that were really good in the 60s and really good in the 70s that I don't even know about because they did not stand, throughout history, and Mike Reed did. So,
yeah, and the thing about Mike Reed too, College Hall of Famer, and he won all those awards. This is why we cared about Jair Brown not being all Big Ten, because in 50 years they're going to look back at Jair Brown, and I don't want to see that's how you look at guys that you've never seen before. You look at the awards they won. You look at, this guy was All-American, this guy was All-Conference, and we're still able to reference that. So that's why we care about that stuff. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, so that's just an aside because, some people do care about the history, and hopefully, my kids and Corey's kids and grandkids will care about that stuff. So
I'm going to tell so many Jair Brown stories. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. They'll be like, Grandpa's going off about Jair Brown again.
All right, what you got, Sean?
All right, so my second pick, the third overall pick, I'm going to go with Bruce Clark. Bruce Clark was part of the 1978 team that played in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. First ever junior to win the Lombardi Trophy, which went to the best lineman in America. He had 21 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 3 fumble recoveries. And he was an All-American in both 78 and 79. Played alongside Matt Millen, guy that I think we're going to hear shortly. And, was awesome player. Again, if you're someone younger, if you ask them about Bruce Clark, I mean, if you ask older fans about Bruce Clark, they rave about him. And he was so good that he was a better college player than Matt Millen, and Matt Millen was a hell of a player in college. So, yeah, I'm going Bruce Clark with my second pick.
I had him as my next defensive tackle, but I did not have him as my next pick. Although, to me, Sean, him winning that Lombardi as a junior, that really stood out to me, right? Like, I was trying to think about trying to distinguish guys from one another, like doing that as a junior and then coming back and being an All-American in 79. we talked a lot also about Courtney Brown having 70 TFLs. Well, Clark had 43 back in the 70s. Like that's really impressive. So, yeah, Bruce Clark is definitely a guy that, again, not obviously as old as Mike Reed, but like has a name that you hear, whether you're 6 years old or you're 60 years old. People talk about that around any sort of Penn State football conversation. You made things difficult for me, Sean, because just to give you transparency here, I had Clark as my number 5. And in front of him, I have 2 guys that obviously haven't been picked yet. And I think I would feel bad if I didn't pick this person next. But I don't think you could go wrong with either pick. But I'm going to take Tom Bahali. Statistically, statistically it's good. It's really good, but it's not overly impressive. But I don't know how to describe him. He's like a historical figure to Penn State football in the 2000s. Like, you just have to know about Tom Bahali. You could argue he has one of the top 5 most memorable plays in Penn State football history when he hit Troy Smith. I think there's more to him than just the stats, right? This is a guy that we're going to remember for a long time. And then I guess just to finish it off, his story, and what he did to get his degree, and coming from Africa, and then obviously having a really good career in the NFL too. 11 sacks and 17 TFLs in 2005 was really what kind of separated him from others. And then he was the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. But I think it goes more than just stats of Tom Bahali, if that makes sense, Sean.
Tamba was unbelievable. I mean, he's one of my favorite guys ever, and played a long time. Also known as one of the really good guys who have ever played at Penn State. People love Tom Bahali as a person. They love him in Kansas City too. Like, just awesome guy, awesome player. I wish he was on some of these Mahomes teams and could have got a ring. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to make it long enough to hang on. He was able to be on some good Chiefs teams, but those were mostly Alex Smith teams. But we talked about Crombulus Michael, my buddy Mike. He started liking the Chiefs after Larry Johnson was drafted by the Chiefs, and I mean, loves Tamba as well. So yeah, I like the pick. I do think you could have gotten Tamba later though. With my pick,
interesting,
I'm going with Matt Millen. I'm going with Bruce Clark's teammate. I think they were called Salt and Pepper back in the day. And 1978 All-American, had 54 tackles, two forced fumbles, and blocked a punt. He was an integral part to that 1978 team. Probably did his best. I mean, he was an awesome player at Penn State. He was an All-American. Probably did his best work in the pros, though. Like, he was an outstanding player for the Raiders, helped them win Super Bowls. But he was a great player at Penn State. And that was Millen pick was probably the toughest one so far for me, though, because he could have went a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I didn't really know where to put him either. Not great at saying Tagovailoa though. Just wondering.
Nah. This is not for the top 10 announcers all the time at Penn State. This is just defensive linemen, and we always say like the guy was a stud, and sometimes we poke fun at him announcing, but it's all love, because I mean, he was awesome player at Penn State.
Good advocate for Penn State.
Yeah, loves the school, so nothing but good things about him. Great guy.
I really can't believe this guy's still here. I think this is a great value to get him in a 3rd round. And that's Michael Haynes.
Damn, he was my next pick.
Yeah. 15 sacks in 2002. He's 6th all-time in tackles for loss in Penn State history. 3rd I believe, in Penn State history with 25 and a half sacks total, if I can read my own handwriting. Big Ten Player of the Year. And it's just, I mean, again, I think his stats are better than Tamba's, but I took Tamba because more of the icon. But Haynes was a beast. I mean, he was a beast. And I know it's not necessarily we're trying to build the best lineup, Sean, but I'm sitting there with Mike Reed in the middle and Tamba and Haynes on the outside. I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, that's a good lineup so far. So, yeah, my funny story about Michael Haynes, too. So I was at a game when I was 7, and we saw the team. It was right after they beat Illinois, and the team was leaving the stadium. Michael Haynes threw me his wristband, so that was pretty cool. So,
You still have that wristband?
yeah, it's in my room at my parents' house somewhere. But
That's awesome. You have a Michael Haynes wristband, and you did not take him with the opportunity to.
I know I was, yeah. Like I said, it was the toughest. That was the toughest pick so far for me. So
the man gave you his wristband.
I know. I'm sorry, Michael, if you're listening. I am sorry. With my next pick, I'm gonna go with Jimmy Kennedy. Jimmy was 2002 Defensive Lineman of the Year and a 2-time first team All Big Ten selection. He was a first-round draft pick. AP, he was an All-American by Sporting News. Finished his career with 213 tackles, 14 sacks, and 39 TFLs. So going Jimmy Kennedy, he was also part of that line with Michael Haynes. He was a defensive tackle, kind of the type of defensive tackle I'd really like now at Penn State. Big dude, 320 pounds. He plugged up the middle there with Spice Adams. So I'm going Jimmy Kennedy with my next pick.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked him because otherwise I think I'd have won this pretty easily. But that made things a lot harder because before you picked that, I was about to say it's about to get interesting because I think we got 3 picks left, and I think it's very, very difficult to really separate some of these guys. And so, I think I just got to take the best value here at this point, right? And I think that's Aaron Maben. So that's who I'm going to take. 24 and a half TFLs in his career, 16 sacks. Maybe never got the credit he really deserved. Also, I want to say he was 59. Another number that not used very often. Please tell me you were thinking about him. Did I reach?
Not really. I mean, the guy was. I always really liked him at Penn State. I mean, he was just a little small. That was problem in the pros. He just didn't have a big frame, and yeah, that was his only flaw at Penn State, in my opinion. And I don't think you could go wrong with him, but
This is your last pick. It's sometimes nice to go last because you get, I get last kind of crack at what's left, but obviously you get first dibs, so it's tricky.
I mean, there's a lot of different directions I could go. I'm going to go with, good luck running the ball on us because you're not going to do it. I'm going to go with Rosie Greer. And Rosie Greer was a guy from way back in the day. He is kind of a Forrest Gump character of sorts in that you see him in different historical moments. He was with Robert Kennedy when he was assassinated. He apparently got O.J. Simpson to confess to him, but he was a pastor, so they weren't able to use his testimony. And he was a hell of a football player. So Rosie Greer played played at Penn State back in the 60s. He was a very impressive guy. He played when Joe was actually an assistant at Penn State, and was one of the first real stars at Penn State. He was an All-American under Rip Engel. And like I said, good luck around the ball on us, because it ain't happening. And we have Courtney Brown, so that's going to make up for any deficiencies in the pass rush department.
Was he there? I had it. He was there in the 50s. Am I wrong on that?
Yes, you're right. It was late 50s. He played in the NFL in the 60s.
I'm gonna say I think he also ran track and field at Penn State for a little bit or something like that too. When I was doing research on him. Interesting. I didn't have him. I didn't have him high on here, to be honest with you, Sean. But I like going. We've now both gone back to pre-Joe for a pick, so I think that's cool. I don't know how we're supposed to do this. I don't think it matters. I think I got to take him. I had him high up on my board, and he's still there. Not a true defensive tackle. Played some defensive end, but I'm going to Tim Johnson. 1983, 1986. Not a bunch of tackles, but 86 he had 33 tackles, 5 sacks, but he had a national championship. And he was versatile. And I think there's something about a guy that wins a national championship. I don't think it's as important as a quarterback, but let me just run through these names real quick. I believe he's the only quarterback we picked, defensive lineman that we picked, either of us, that won a national championship. I don't think any of us had anyone from the 82 season, did we? I don't think so.
No.
So he'd be the only guy that won a national championship for Penn State. And everyone wants to give a lot of credit to Conlon but I think a lot of it had to do with the defensive line. So Tim Johnson, maybe a unsung hero to that 86 team, but I think a lot of people would be like, oh yeah, that guy, was instrumental in that national championship team. So it rounds out my squad. I think I needed another guy that could play inside. Not that necessarily matters, but feeling pretty good, Sean.
I am too, and I think for my team, you could bounce Millen outside. He actually played linebacker in the pros, so I think that's what Coach Kane would do. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way my team turned out. Got some real legends in there.
There's a long list of guys, Sean, that we did not include.
Honorable mentions long.
Yeah. I'll just name a couple that I had. I'm curious, how high up did you have Carl Nassib?
I think I didn't have him that high because he only had one great year. So, I mean, and I loved Carl his senior year, but when you only have one great year, I mean, it's hard for me to put you with some of these guys. And I think he was also a little unlucky because he was on a mediocre team.
Yeah, but I will say this, his 1 year was better than anyone else's.
Yeah. I mean,
I just think there's something for being the
Michael
single
Haynes
season.
has the sack record though, doesn't he?
Hey, not the single season.
Okay.
Nassib has it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just think there's something there. I didn't pick him. I think if you would have taken Johnson, I don't know how it would have possibly shaped out where I would have ended up with Nassib. But if I could have ended up with Jimmy Kennedy, I think I would have been more convinced maybe to go to another defensive end and go with maybe a Carl Nassib. But I mean, there's a bunch of guys, dude. I had Jared Audrick up there.
Me too.
Didn't pick him. I had Bob White up there.
Yep.
Didn't pick him. And honestly, Bob White, another guy like with Johnson, like you could have argued. I just didn't want another defensive end, to be honest with you. Wisniewski, Leo, nose tackle. He was on the 82nd team. I had Dave Robinson back in the day, 1962, won Player of the Year, but not the Heisman, Defensive Player of the Year, and he was a Hall of Famer. Anthony Adams and Devin Still.
Yeah, I also had Devin Still pretty high. Tyoka Jackson, Jared Odrick, who was another Dolphin, and yeah, Bob White. Another guy that I thought about for a second, but then I was like, nah, was Yetur Gross-Matos. He's not a top 10 guy, but I feel like he pushes for top 20.
Yeah,
so
he's up there on the stat list pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really good player for us, and another guy kind of like a lesser Courtney Brown, probably overshadowed by Michael a little bit, but he opened up a lot of stuff for him, and it felt like Yetur always delivered in big games. Like if there was a big play that needed to be made, he was either pressuring the quarterback or pick up a sack for us. I just had a thought.
I only had one other guy, and that was Brad Scioli.
Yeah, Brad Scioli. He was a tight end too for us early in his career. Early in his career, and then he converted.
He ended up with 10 sacks too, I think, in the '98 season. So
we're gonna have a new addition to this list next year. I have a feeling.
Oh yeah,
Chop.
You think Chop makes it in the top 10?
Maybe.
That'd be a pretty impressive year.
I think he's pushing top 20, and he just had 1 year. But I can't put him in the top 20 yet, though. He just didn't accomplish enough yet. But yeah, I think he's already top 30, and that's really saying something.
Yeah.
Jordan Hill and Anthony Zettel, too, we should probably mention.
Yep. It's just those guys. Like, I think Jordan Hill, he's a top 30 guy. Zettel's probably a top 30 guy. But again, once you start getting to those guys, like those guys to us might be top 30, but you ask somebody from the 70s, they're like, well, you're forgetting some people.
They probably have other guys that they could think of.
But I mean, so then begs the question, like a Shaka Toney high up on the sack list, like he technically should probably be fringe 30. I mean, the amount of sacks that he has. Like he needs to be in that conversation. So, but I mean, how many people do you tell them to list off their 30 defensive linemen in Penn State history? I doubt 50% of them have Shaka Toney on their list.
No, Shaka won games for us almost single-handedly. I think of the 2018 Indiana game, and that was
3 sacks.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter. Like that game was way too close for comfort, and without Shaka, we probably lose the game because they just couldn't block him, and he just kept racking up sacks, and he just having that speed on the outside. I think we've only had it a couple times in my lifetime, and it was him and it was Aaron Maben, and Maben was the better player, but Shaka gave us that same type of speed.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut it out here, but Deion Barnes kind of type.
Yeah, he was like a better version of Deion Barnes, I think.
The only other person, like what Odafe Owe never really got a chance to show.
Yeah, one of those guys that is going to do his best work in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, but this was a hard, and I think defense is always going to be really hard. I mean, it's going to be hard for every list. Let's just be honest about it. But defense especially is going to – because people resonate with defense, I think, differently than they do with offense. And they're just those guys that – like Tom Bahali is a perfect example to me. I keep coming back to him. But, like that, there was moments that you just won't forget, and I just think that bumps people up the list. And a lot of those moments in Penn State football history happen on the defensive side of things. And let's just be honest about it. Like, not a bunch of great offensive plays happen. I mean, I know there's moments here and there, but it's the defense that carried really Joe Paterno's teams 90% of the time. So, yeah, I think that's why it's going to be fun, but challenging.
Yeah, for sure. Defense was the name of the game here, and I mean, our best teams always had great defenses. So that's, and there's just a lot more people than quarterbacks. Like James Franklin, think about in his time at Penn State, he's been here a long time. He's only had 3 quarterbacks. So
Right.
there's just so many guys on just the defensive line alone that you could go through. And like you said, I think if you ask people who are older than us, they would start naming guys from the 70s that we frankly probably never heard of.
Right.
Or if we did, just hear him passing and be like, oh yeah, that guy. And so where we name people like Anthony Zettel and Jordan Hill, and no guarantee in 20, 30 years, like our kids are going to know who they are,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we didn't like Daquan Jones or
Austin Johnson.
Like, yeah, and Jordan Hill, I think more because of what he was a part of and the season he was a part of. But honestly, Austin Johnson is probably the better player, probably from like a skill perspective. But
yeah, he's still playing in the league.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a good run there for defensive tackles. That's kind of what Penn State needs to get back to. You had, let me make sure I get the order right here, but you went basically, I think you went Daquan. I'm not gonna. I think it was Daquan Jones, Devin Still, Austin Johnson, Jordan Hill. Is that the right order?
Yeah, that's about right.
Jones and Still played at the same time together for at least a little bit, but
yeah,
I don't know how much Still and Johnson played together, if they did.
I don't think they did. No, Zettel and Johnson were teammates. They were line mates. I think they came in together and went out together. So
was Hill before Johnson then? I think so. Then had to be.
Yeah.
Did Hill play with Still?
I don't. No, Hill played.
2012.
Yeah, he did. He had to have. Yeah, because Still was 2011, and Hill was 2012. So they did play together.
Yeah. So that was, talk about good defensive tackles.
Larry Johnson.
What Penn State needs to get to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Larry
Johnson. beefy guys.
Ooh, lots of beef.
Anyway,
Whopper.
That's a great commercial. I don't know. I think what we're gonna do as far as order, Sean, is I think we should do like offense, defense, kind of a goofy one, and then offense, defense, and kind of a goofy one. So I don't know what you're thinking, but like, we can do with recruiting coming up, why don't we draft best recruits in Penn State history?
That's cool with me. Guys that have committed to us, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, are we okay? We could do it however we want. At BK,
right.
Have it our way.
Yep. But that will be I mean, you can talk about like what that recruit meant, how obviously the star rating of that person, the position, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And for better or worse, should we call it greatest recruits, or should I call it? Yeah, let's just call it that.
Let's do it. Yeah, I think we
can have fun with it.
Yeah, there are a lot of different directions that could go. So
yes, could get nasty real quick. Anyway, that's all we have. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying these episodes as we begin to walk our way towards February, and then all of a sudden, it will be March, and then spring practice will be back, and then I'm telling you guys, it goes fast when spring practice hits. I mean, it's like spring practice, blue and white game, and then the summer goes right on by, and we're there again. So enjoy the slow. I mean, we're still put out a 2-hour podcast. We did ramble a little bit more than we usually do, but enjoy it because these are the dog days, if there are any. So
Dog days of February or January. I can't even keep track of the months. And yeah, we even got into some Tony Romo discussion. So
yeah, I'm sure you love that. All right, well, please drop a 5-star review if you haven't already. We really, really do appreciate it. And again, biggest thing you guys can do to support us is share it with a friend. If you made it this far in the episode, I'm going to give you a little Easter egg and just let you know that I have been working on modding NCAA 14 with the college football revamped version. And there will be a simulation of Penn State related teams. I don't know if they're all going to be Penn State versus Penn State, but it might be like Penn State versus somebody else. Going back in history. And the first one is going to be Penn State 2022 versus Penn State 2016. Been working on the rosters. The rosters are done. Everything's actually 90% done. So that might be on YouTube in the next week or two. So pay attention for that.
who do you think wins?
You know, I really don't know. I want to say 2022 wins because I've looked at the roster and like by the numbers, the roster is technically better, but 2016 has the best player by far, and it's Saquon, obviously. So like Saquon, I think he's right around a 96 overall, which is, I think the next closest person might be Blake Gillikin at like 91, just because of the way the game rates punters that have good accuracy and punting ability. So, Chris Godwin was, I think I put him at 92. I think Trace was a 91, 90. So they got some star power on offense, but I'm gonna be honest with you, when I went back and looked at the rosters, like the depth on defense for 2016, some young talent, but like I don't remember Sharif Miller doing anything in 2016.
Nah,
and I don't really remember like Torrance Brown doing anything in 2016. And like, think about like Chop Robinson, Nick Tarbert, and Adisa Isaac, Denai Dennis Sutton, and then think about like Garrett Sickles and Evan Schwan. Like, I mean, I love those guys. Like, again, it's just not a knock on what they were able to accomplish, but I mean, they had their moments, but yeah, they're not rated as high, I guess is the nice way to say it.
Well, Torrance Brown did have a couple moments.
He did. That sack in Michigan game was fantastic. Great hit.
Yep.
I thought he was going to be a stud. I will say this. If the Penn State team had Jason Cabinda on it this year, I really think it could be one of the best defenses of all time. Like, you think about if they just had a solid Mike, what that might have done for that defense. That's still probably top 10-ish defense of all time at Penn State. But, man, if they had Jason Cabinda in the middle, not even just from, like, the middle line, like, you can name a bunch of other better middle linebackers at Penn State. I guess we'll draft them one day. But from the leadership and the verbal, I just think that would have been a perfect fit for the last year's defense. But anyway.
Alas.
You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. For Sean Kane, I'm Corey Listokey. We will catch you guys next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.